All right, well, hi everybody, and welcome to the conversation. I'm here with some just dear people for our family, Earl and Dana. So thanks you guys for doing this with us.
Oh, no problem.
No problem.
It's fun
Looking
because,
forward to it.
yeah, I mean, when I think about this podcast, honestly, you two, for Kirsten and I, so much of the vision for the podcast came from our friendship and our conversations over the years. Getting to just talk about Jesus, our walks with the Lord, race, ethnicity, culture. I mean, those are so much of our conversations with you. So this is really rich. I'm stoked we finally get to do this because you really were so much of our passion to learn how to do these things. So, man, this is awesome. So, before we get into even where you guys are at in life now and some of the things that you guys have gone through, why don't you just share with people a little bit about how you grew up and where you're both coming from?
You want to go first, man?
No?
Okay. Well, I'm 43, about to go on 44. I was born in Compton, California, and I have an older sister. Compton was really fun. I remember growing up. It was real family orientated. A lot of block parties and neighborhood watches. And then it turned around fifth or sixth grade is when it started to get a little rough, and then we moved to Cerritos, and that was like just a culture shock to me. I thought like Saved by the Bell was like came to life to me when I moved to Cerritos. It was crazy. And then I finished my high school and junior high in Cerritos area, and I got to know a lot of different races or religions and
Yeah.
just family styles. And then, so I had a very eclectic, I guess,
Yeah.
childhood. I mean, from the gangs, to being primarily all black schools, and then halfway through my education, going through a very diverse and ethnically, rich and experience. So
Yeah.
mine is, I'm a very unique, not super unique, but I think my upbringing and my experiences is pretty. I don't think it's very typical
Yeah.
to have those such extremes. So
Okay. Okay.
that's probably like a good snapshot of like
Yeah.
my beginning to where I am now.
Okay. Dana, what about for you? What was growing up like for you?
Oh, wow. So I was raised by the most polar opposite groups of people. So my parents, my father's family are hippies from Venice in the music business and very beachy.
Okay.
Um, I would say anything goes, especially back then.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, I'm straight out of Ecuador, Catholicism. I would never let my grandma not have a seat. She
Right.
asked me to be quiet. I still be quiet.
Yeah.
Like there's just certain things I wouldn't do. So just two very big extremes. And there was drugs and drinking and young pregnancies, um, interracial marriages or relationships
Yeah.
on one side, and a lot of different things that a lot of people wouldn't be used to, I guess.
Okay.
I don't really know how to explain that yet,
Yeah.
but it was
Yeah.
very, very something different than I know now.
Right.
So that it was interesting because I have a hard time categorizing it as bad because for me it wasn't bad, it
Yeah.
was loving, and it was um, artistic and unique, but it's not something that I would walk with now.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
um, it's been interesting. Like there was, like I said, two different things: Catholicism, and on the other side, anything goes.
Yeah.
So
So what about for both of your
interesting
faith
ride.
journeys? Did you both grow up around church, not around church? What was it like for both of you just in your walks with the Lord growing up?
As far as church went, not much church. I remember my mom always saying the Lord's Prayer before we went to bed.
Yeah.
Um, there was a there was a church around the corner when we were living in Compton, and then we went to a few Sunday schools, or I think they did it on Saturday maybe, but not much more than that. And then my older cousins, who I was really close with, they're like 4 and 6 years older than me,
Okay.
and the family they started to date. The father was a pastor, And they really got into religion. And I remember my cousin would call me and read from Revelations and scare the crap out of me. And then he had me give his my life to the Lord over the phone when I was like 13 or 14 years old, maybe seventh grade, somewhere around there. And then as I got further into high school, I think I started, I wasn't drinking, but it was a couple times I went drinking with my older cousins.
Yeah.
And the one who eventually married into that family saw me there, and then him and his wife called me into their house, which was next door, and they started praying over me, and they anointed me with oil, and I was freaking out. I'm like,
I bet, dude. I bet, man.
What's going on? And honestly, I mean, besides that, until really when I met Dana for the last time before we got married, I think that was my saving grace. It was just those couple things where my cousin had me give my life to the Lord over the phone, and then his older brother and his wife praying over me and anointing me with oil, I think has saved me as much as I could be saved until I finally fully gave my life back over to the Lord. So
awesome. Okay, thanks.
That's pretty true.
Yeah.
For me, my mom was Catholic, and so we didn't really go to church. We kind of went to church, and I don't want to say anything like they thought it was wrong or anything, but my mom just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
So she had me in catechism class.
Yeah.
And eventually she's like, you just don't have to go anymore. And I was like, okay, like I didn't know why.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't remember not knowing who Jesus was and how incredibly important he was. So I don't know if and there's this weird thing that I always go back to when I was really young, and my dad used to put me to bed, which is, cool, but he used to say the Lord's Prayer with me, and he is not a Christian. He might be now, but he wasn't then. But that was important to him to say that with me, and that's how I learned the Lord's Prayer.
Okay.
And that's something that I held with me for my whole life. And I often now I can look back and see where God had intervened. But I lost my best friend at 13, and everyone around me told me that God wanted her more. So at that moment, I detached from whatever thoughts I had of God. I thought he was terrible. I thought that how dare he? Who was he? And so that, but it was always a warring, within me because I knew who he was. So it was like I was just mad at him and stomping my foot. So, but he was always there. And then my brother came to the Lord. I don't remember how old I was because I was a mess. I might have been 18. 18 to 21 is when I had started that journey. But I was looking for Jesus everywhere not Jesus. I was looking for something in every other religion. And I researched them all. And then my brother found, Jesus. And my mom went with him. And they were praying and praying and praying for me. And then eventually one night it broke through. And came to the Lord after that when I was 21. So.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: with both of those upbringings and kind of both of your experiences, even with just both of your different ethnic and cultural backgrounds, what's it been like even when you got together, coming from those two different worlds? Describe kind of that beginning journey for you guys as you both coming from really different places. What was that like in the beginning?
I thought I was joining a cult because she was going through. So, like I said, I did the thing with my cousins, and then from about the end of high school until about 26 or so, I was just doing everything you shouldn't be doing,
Okay.
And but my best friend was getting married, and then the night before, I was like talking to the Lord, like I'm at the end of my rope. I was like, either you save me now, or I'm going full speed in this other direction, but I'm burnt out. And it's like, I felt hopeless. Like I knew there was no happiness or joy. Like, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had good money where I could do anything I wanted to do, but I wasn't happy. And then, so they go to the wedding, and then Dana's there, and like, I hadn't seen her in a couple of years. And we connected. And then we actually ended up leaving reception together. We went to go see a movie or something. And then she let me know, like, hey, I'm given my life to the Lord, and if you want to be a part of my life, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
And it was like just like right the night before I was talking, I was like, hey, I need you, and she was going to a home church, and it was all white people, and I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up in a church.
Yeah.
So the worship and speaking in tongues and the dancing, I'm like, oh man, I really like it. Because they're gonna try to get me to drink some Kool-Aid or something. And but everything turned out to be, obviously legit. But it's like my life. So
yeah.
It wasn't necessarily because my upbringing in junior high through high school, hanging out with all sorts of people. The fact that it wasn't any black people there didn't really bother me. It was just the fact of church.
Right.
It was like church was weird to me, and then it was at somebody's house.
Okay.
So there was more of that rather than a cultural thing for me, because I'm the type of person I enjoy being around diversity.
Yeah.
I love diversity. I don't like being in all of one thing anyway. So just that part didn't bother me. Just like actually going to church was super weird for me. So it was more about that than culture.
Yeah. Would that be similar for you, Dana?
Well, when we first met, I was on the same path. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get here, but I was like selling drugs. I was living on my own. And it's so funny because I say I was selling drugs, but in my mind, I was just selling drugs to my friends because they were already smoking it, and I didn't want to live at home anymore. So I thought it was the best business deal in the world. Like, okay, and come over and I'll make you dinner. So it was just very means to an end.
Yeah.
And for a cool hangout with my friends and to live on my own. So, but then, like I said, one night, and it was the same night but they were having a prayer thing at that same church that my mom was at and my brother was at that we went to. And they were praying for me, and the Lord spoke to me and said, what are you doing here? Very clearly, what are you doing here? And this is not who you are. And I was looking straight in a mirror, and I knew it wasn't me. So I would never say that to myself. So, and then from there, it tumbled down. And I got saved September 8th, right before September 11th, which, blows your mind, because first I came to the Lord, and then the world fell apart.
Yeah.
So for literally 6 months, I slept with the Bible under my pillow because I was scared to death. So I'm like, oh gosh, this is all real. This Bible's real. And then in May, I re-met him, and I was so excited to meet him again. And it was, you love it, just smile about it. So, because I was so excited to see him, because I was so awful to him during those times. Because the person I was dating I call it the enemy, but the person I was dating, said no, I couldn't talk to him even as a friend anymore. So it was like, now looking back, it's like the enemy didn't want us ever together.
Right.
Like even as friendships, So I was like, I need to apologize to him. I was so awful to him. And I don't care about apologizing to anybody.
Right.
On the planet, hardly ever. But I felt like I needed to apologize to Earl, which is so weird. Like, it's amazing, but it's weird. So that day on the wedding, I went up to him and I was like, I'm so sorry for being awful to you. He didn't even remember.
I'm like, it was the funniest. I'm like, okay.
And I'm looking cute. Yeah. I'm single. I'm adorable. And he's like, and so that was interesting. But that was the day, like I told him, following the Lord. But for me, like I said, I lived with somebody else. I wasn't living a virtuous life. And for me, explaining to him that I'm following the Lord, I was very precise with what I was saying. Like, hey, I'm not sleeping with you. I'm not doing drugs anymore. I might not drink anymore. And I didn't for many years. I'm trying not to cuss anymore. We all know that came back. But I'm trying not to do these things because I didn't know the line. I had no line until I crossed it. And I crossed every single line. So that thing about how we got together, the reason I tell that story is because I think it's super important that whoever's listening to this understands that we were messes when we got together.
Yeah.
Absolute messes. I think the Lord kept us apart.
Yeah.
Because we would have destroyed each other. But when we were younger, but he brought us back together, but we were messes. Yeah. Our family lives were terrible. My parents were going through almost a divorce at that time. His parents had just gotten divorced.
Yeah.
We had no idea what even loving somebody would look like.
Yeah.
And I was like going by, I think that like total like like the narrow path Christian that
Yeah.
nothing was allowed. And I was telling him how to be and different things like that. That was not how it is. And it took a lot of Marianne to help, I don't know, but to help us
Yeah.
straighten that line. So, I mean, I think that was important to talk about because we started our Jesus walk together.
Yeah.
And I had these like ridiculous rules of what following Jesus was like. He was trying to figure out. I wasn't letting him lead, vice versa, walking through that. I didn't know anything about race. I didn't care about race. I thought it was silly that people would even talk about that because even though I came from crazy places, in my hippie family, all colors were invited, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Everywhere, every gender, every sexuality, every situation, criminal. So in some ways, I always say, like, if we could do that for Jesus, it was awesome.
Yeah.
But and then for Earl, like I think I'm not gonna want to talk for you, but I mean, we were just coming from these places of not knowing how to even be as Christians, but how to be as people.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was a good person, but I did everything wrong, and I didn't even know. But I know now color is what I'm saying. It took me a long journey to figure out. Like I had to talk with my grandmother that I was marrying a black man, and she asked me some very she's the most cutest person on the planet, but she asked me some very I don't want to say ridiculous, ignorant questions, and they were solid.
Yeah.
Like I mean, she just didn't know anything.
Right.
She came from a different country, and she just didn't know what about the children, what about, and I didn't even. Like I took her out to dinner just to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like so, I mean, and she was cool. She's the best, but we still have to go through that. And it wasn't even on my radar until me and Earl started dating. So that's how we started out.
Yeah. Whew. Go ahead.
No. So once you started dating, and then dating, like you said, you became aware of the topic of race and how it influenced things. What has that been like for you guys? We'll get to your faith journeys in a moment, kind of with church and how that's played in but even just in your relationship over the years, raising kids, dealing with, both of your sides of the family, how has race influenced, or the topic or even the conversation influenced just your relationship and how you've learned to do life together? Kind of unpack what that's been like for us a little bit for you.
I don't know. That's a good question. Like I'm pretty good at keeping that outside noise outside. As far as it goes between me and her.
Yeah.
But I think some of the things that I experienced, and then it's like, is it because I'm black, or I think they don't, I think they're racist, or I say things like that, and it's hard for people to hear that sometimes. It's just like, because a lot of people think it's an excuse. Or is a cop out, or it's just they don't believe you. They don't believe me when I say things like, I think it's because I'm black.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's hard for people to like separate me from the news or from a TV show or some music or something. It's just like knowing who I am as a person and how I interact with all sorts of people. Mm-hmm. When I say that, I don't say it flippantly. Right. I don't say that as as an excuse. That's I try to fight that feeling, those words or those thoughts.
Right.
Before they come out of my mouth.
Right.
And I don't, like I said, I can't speak for Dana, but I think having kids, and I think that might have. I don't know. Has that changed for you, or?
Oh man, yeah. Like I said, I started off like when Earl used to say those kind of things. I'd be like, no, I would dismiss it. I'd be like, no, that's not true. Come on, Earl, let's get it together. Like I thought I was like this aficionado. Like I had the nerve one time to tell my mother-in-law, we were talking about it, that slavery could have possibly been good because Jesus saved so many, black people. I would never say that now, because Jesus would have done it anyways.
Right.
He would have saved those people anyways. And I was so arrogant in my thinking, like this is where my vice comes in, is that I was so arrogant, like who did I think I was? Like, yes, God makes everything for good, but it didn't make it a good thing. And so now that I see those things, like I'm much more protective of Earl, because something he doesn't like, and I can't speak because he says this all the time. He is not the representative of Black people to anybody else. And when I use the word white, I don't want to be like disrespectful, but it's just, I mean, like as far as the color of your skin from light brown to white, you know what I mean, or darker, even my color, is that he's not the representative of all peoples. He can't be. And when you say people of color, who are you talking about? What community are you talking about? Because there's so many communities in Black communities. There's even like a Latin and Black community inside of the Black community. Like there's even an Afro-Black community. Like who are you talking about? So he can't possibly be that representation to you. So that's hard for me. But as a mother, I mean, I posted this year a picture of somebody who passed away, and we're not using names, and my son looked just like him. And I took a picture and I put it on there and said, in case you wonder why I fight so hard about it. And I think he looked just like him. And people don't understand like why, like I've had actually people come and ask me questions, inboxing me questions about things. And it's like, do you think because I'm white-ish and white and Latin that you can ask me these questions and I won't go hard on this? And it's like my husband, you won't ever ask my husband that question.
What kind of stuff would people ask you, Dana? Like what would be a question somebody would ask you? Like what, like?
Oh, legitimately, like I've had, and this is the hard part because it's Christian friends too, so this is hard. But I've had them come and ask and say, well, how do you know that it's race related? How do you know that? Like I've had a friend, the person that I had a friend that was telling me that they weren't getting a job and they believed it was because they were Black, and I just don't believe that. And I had to tell that person, whoa, that was so dismissive of your so-called Black friend. Like we know, just like girls know when we're being catcalled on the street, a Black person knows. So, but they would inbox me that. It's like, why are we, like, don't you feel like you're causing, what's that called? I'm sorry, no, I almost said discernment, but division. I was like, no, that's a real thing. And if you can't like go through that yourself and think that maybe, just maybe that might be true for your Black friend, then I don't know how we're friends because my husband's Black and he goes through that all the time.
But I found that like growing up in Cerritos and, majority white Christian churches, and I've met plenty of, white, Chinese, Jewish, all sorts of people. And they're not like that. I think that's part of their biggest struggle is that it's just when you don't know it, you don't know that hate, you haven't seen that hate, you kind of assume everybody's like you in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just like...
You can't comprehend that someone would do that.
You're comparing everybody else to you and your circle of friends.
Right.
And there's like other people outside of that who are just mean. I think it's broken and just hurts, extremely hurt, insecure people who are like this. And so I felt like when they say, oh, you're just saying that, it's because they can't see someone else being like that. They don't know people like that.
Well, and I think that for me, this is where me and Earl kind of separate. Usually that's my stance in life. Like, oh, they just wouldn't know, and that's a bummer. But in this area, it's like, no, I believe it's a direct result of the way that we're educated. And I think that it's colonial mindset. And I think, those are my thoughts. And I think that it's just been completely taught through years and years and years and years through education. And I also think that it's like, there's even prejudices that I have to correct. I have to check myself all the time.
Yeah.
It might not be with the Black community anymore, but it might be with the Asian community, or it might be with Latin, a certain sort of Latin. And I have to be like, oh, that was not right. I have to make that right,
Yeah.
So, and I am not against like having prejudice. Like you just have to do better when you figure it out. I'm like against when people just say, no, that can't be true.
Right.
Or no, that's not how it works in the education, whatever, like however it's educated.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And because it could be in public schools or at home school or in other schools, because it just depends on who's teaching it.
Yeah.
If you're not giving a full, so that's where we differ. And he is, in my opinion, sorry, babe, but in my opinion, I think it's just from growing up that way that it's too much to bear anything else. I think for his heart. I think maybe for other people, but I can only speak on Earl, like what I would think as his wife, because he just is tender, like, no, that's not tender-hearted. I just think that for him, it's a lot. It is a lot to have these things that he's fighting against with the kind of people he does, because he interacts with so many different races all the time. And I think that the truth about knowing the way people think sometimes is too much. Hard, really hard.
Yeah. When I say those things, it's like it's people that I'm close to or I grew up with that were in my inner circle, that would say those things, and there's a bit of laziness there for them to think that way, but I just don't, they're not bad people.
Yeah.
And it's a difference between racist and have prejudices, or you believe in stereotypes and things like that.
Right.
I don't think any of those people. It's the difference when you have that hate. I think that is when it crosses a different line, and I don't see that from my those people who would say those things for me, like somebody at work or something like that that doesn't really know me, but it would make me sad for somebody to call me my friend.
Yeah.
And then I would say, I'd bring up a certain situation, and they thought I was just being, oversensitive, or, just whatever you want to put in there as far as my emotion. That was hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But I think it's like I was hypersensitive to it and more, like wanted justice and rallies and things like that. And now I've calmed down a little bit and is like
taking it up.
And then she's with the kids, and just seeing more things, and she's getting a little more of the advocate. But the only thing I could say I could represent of the Black community is that we're all unique. It's like I'm an example of uniqueness amongst a group of people,
right?
Which doesn't really doesn't limit to just Black people,
right?
It's just we're all unique, and that's I get a lot of the Black community questions, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
because I only speak for me. I could I could kind of relate to my mom and my dad because of stories, and my sister, but I can't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they don't even believe what you're saying. It's like they don't believe the words that he's actually, like the stories he's actually telling. He's like, man, it's almost like he tells a story and they say, oh, well, that can't be true. Like, it's so dismissive of this person that you're asking this. It's like a purposeful ignorance. It's like everything is shiny. If we, like Earl's telling us and we believe him in so many things, we would even let him lead us. But that can't be true. It's for me to watch it. That's when I get like all burly and like, hey, but I try not to, because I just see it. It's called weathering, and I've just learned that. I don't know if you know about that, but it's like when, like in the Black community, where you keep getting stories and things happening and it wears you down, just weathering you to the point where you're just like, okay, cool, man. And I feel like sometimes that's where Earl's at. Like, okay, like, all right, man, cool. And he might distance himself from that person that maybe once were cool, and they're still cool, but he knows where he can't live with them anymore.
Yeah. And
that sucks. That really sucks. All because sometimes people just don't want to.
Yeah.
I just don't want to go there. But we've even had like, I don't want to get into like specifics, but a close family member of mine, and during a fight that I wasn't even involved with, start calling my family the N-word to another member of my family because they were in a fight and it would hurt them. And we had to, like, it broke my heart, but we had to get away from them, because at the end of the day, I have children and you can never say those things around my kids. And it wasn't just saying it was like vehement and terrible things just to hurt the person they were fighting with.
Yeah.
And we're like, really? Like, we love you so much. Like, dang. And now we can't, just to protect our kids. Right. Now we can't even be around you. Yeah. Not even for grace's sake. So, I mean, we have that even in our own family. Right. Which, for a long time, people thought that I ran Earl too, which is so funny. I mean, I'm hard and I'm rebellious, but I mean, because he would ask questions like, I remember like,
It's just, I mean, I mean, that's kind of separate, but it's like when people would ask, of me for plans or, to do something.
Right.
I say, yeah, sounds good. Let me check with my wife. And they just,
Yeah.
just culturally, they weren't used to
Right.
that.
yeah,
And
that's
it
what I
was
meant
just,
for culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
and for me, it's just like, that's my wife.
Right.
Like,
So
I don't want a marriage to run somebody.
yeah. So let me ask you this question, kind of on like Dana, with what you and Earl were both sharing. And Earl, you can go first, but Dana, I know that you'll have a thought on this. So over the years, Earl, when you've shared your story as a black man, your experiences, and like you said, people have just dismissed you. Oh, that didn't really happen, or they're, for whatever reason, they're dismissing you, right? For both of you, as that's happened over the years, and you've tried to share your experience from your background, and people are just kind of dismissing it away. What's that been like for you along the way? And then in your walk with Jesus, like, how have you been formed through those conversations, as painful as they've been? How do you think you've changed along the way with kind of how you've learned to interact with people as that stuff happens, throughout your journey?
One, I share less. I don't know if that's good or bad. I share those stories less. I share those stories with people I have connections with.
Mm.
I try to let them get to know me
Yeah.
and believe me and have that relationship.
I hate that.
And then if I feel I have that bond with that person, then I'll share those type of stories.
Yeah.
And but I kind of test the waters. Throw little things here out and there and just see, like, it's not like a test. It's just experience.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, that person isn't, he's not about that. He's not about to, he doesn't want to know the world that way. He's in a safe little bubble.
Yeah.
And his world, he likes the way his world is, and he wants to keep it that way. And he doesn't want to have any ideas of it being any way different.
Right.
And so people like that, I just keep them in their lane. I don't have to be friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And if somebody's not my friend, that's not a bad thing. That doesn't make them a bad person. But with you and like Nate and certain people, and then I could open up completely.
Yeah.
And that I'm not putting somebody in a group.
Yeah.
It's a one-on-one experience that happened to me, and it's even if I'm wrong, it's my perception of how the events folded out, and we could talk about it. That's where I'm at with it. It's like I'm not trying to. Before I was just everybody, it's like I was like this advocate for Black people amongst in our church.
Yeah.
And like I was a representative, and I was like, I just felt a certain way, and it's like it got overwhelming, and it's kind of sad when people like kind of dismissed it. Like, you could tell that he's just one of those guys that think all white people are racist. And if you know anything about me, that's not the life I live.
Yeah.
And so for me to say that to somebody and then to get that kind of attitude or that response, people I've known longer, like my friends from high school, might say something like that. Yeah, but I could continue being friends because we have so much of a friendship, behind us.
Yeah, for sure.
But some people in the church is like, no, I'm not going there. I'm just not,
Yeah. So
that's I kind of it's sad saying it out loud.
Yeah. But it's your reality. So let me maybe where we could go for a second is, obviously a lot of what our passion is to have these conversations and record these conversations is just so that people can hear experiences and stories of people they maybe haven't heard experiences and stories from before, right? Like I mentioned, on a personal level, Kirsten and I have been incredibly influenced by the both of you simply by hearing your story and learning to listen and learning to hear things that might be hard, that I initially might get defensive, or like Earl said, like you said, I might want to just come off and say, well, that couldn't really be that bad, right? Like, you're not really, whatever, I'd water it down. Help us kind of understand for a minute. Could you help us hear from you things that have been said over the years, or things that have come off that I might not even know were dismissive, but they've come off to you as dismissive? Maybe give us some practical things maybe that you guys have both experienced that maybe I wouldn't be aware of until I heard somebody like you say, that was incredibly dismissive or that was incredibly painful. Can you think of things over the years that you've experienced that maybe you could share with people as just, hey, these things when they're said, they come off that way even if you don't realize it?
Well, I know for I have
You go
more,
first.
but like for me as a Latin person, like I'm one of the darkest people in my family. Like so, like my family's on the other side's white with hazel eyes, and like my brother has blue eyes. Like it for me, and I can have people relating just to my Latin side, or they'll say things like, oh gosh, how I don't even know how to explain it. Like they'll sometimes I don't even know how to explain what I want to say, so maybe I'll just wait on that one. I I think sometimes they see me and they think I have, this is what I want to say. They think that I have a certain kind of life that I don't and never had. Like I did not come from a Mexican family. I did not, I mean, not in the traditional sense.
Right.
I don't speak Spanish. I grew up in La Mirada, that is border like I'm Orange County, LA girl. Like, there was mostly white people at my school, um, and I didn't, and it's right next to Biola, so like I lived in a very small town and grew up with a lot of diversity, but not like big cities. So, I think for me, just the assumption for me that I am a certain way when I have no idea about that lifestyle at all.
Right.
That's something that's not hard necessarily, but I'm just not going to correct it anymore. Like, especially at church, and I think sometimes I feel like in church bodies that you have to fight harder in some ways to be known as reputable enough to lead or serve. Like, but I don't know if that's necessarily just because that's how it goes, or if it's because of race or not. Do you know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know how that goes. And being married to a black guy, I'm like the aficionado on knowing black guy stuff, and I'm not. I only know
Right.
our relationship, and like I'm not. I don't. I mean, that's pretty much
I'm
it.
trying to think of stories. I
Like I
mean,
have a bunch of stories, and they're just not coming to me the way I want them to.
Yeah.
like, I do fiber optics for a telecommunication company. So we build the fiber optic network. And then so a lot of these businesses are really super high end businesses that we have to install services to. And then, but I'm in construction, so I don't dress like I'm expected to see a customer. I'm dressed like I'm going to be in a manhole. And we had a job right off the 405 in Harbor. It's like a Hooters restaurant right there. It's like a big old office building right next to it. And we had there was a dark fiber, which means the light wasn't making it from my office to their building. And they called us and said, hey, can you go check this out? And then so, I don't have a print, because it's in the middle of the day, everything is on email through my phone. And then so we're walking around trying to find, and the guy that was working with me is black too. And so we're trying to find the business building manager to let us into the, telecom room.
Right.
And then we finally found her and knocked on the door. It's like, hey, we have a service order for this customer. It's actually for the entire building. And we need to get into your server room so we can make sure that everything's good. And she just had this look on her face. And she's like, well, I just can't be letting any guys into the room.
Yeah.
Because, you could do something and take something. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, it looked like she's about to say some random black guy.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need to talk to somebody, in order to let you in. I was like, well, I could give you somebody's number. I mean, but they're just another name on the other side of the phone that's going to tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you. So I don't see how that's going to change anything, but here's this person.
Right.
And so she gets on the phone with them, and she's talking. She's like, I just can't let any random people into this. And so the thought I had in my head was like, she felt uneasy with letting a black man into her telecom room because, she just didn't. She felt uneasy and she didn't trust me.
Right.
I'm AT&T gear, got a big old truck outside,
Right.
and I've dealt with so many hundreds of customers. I know the difference between each of that feeling I got was a lot of her decision was based on the way I looked. Now, if I were to tell that story to some just friend, or I don't use that term loosely. So say somebody that I'm cool with at church or something
Right.
like that. In the past, it's like, oh, you're just being, sensitive, or you think everybody's racist. That's what you get a lot.
Yeah.
And
which is why would we?
But I'm a 43-year-old black man. I know the difference. Right. I've been walking in this skin my whole life, and I know when somebody's following the rules and procedures versus someone's like just, she's almost startled when she opened the door.
Right.
And it's like, hey, I'm just trying to picture stuff. I have all this equipment hanging off of me, ATT shirt, emails from the boss, with the building, all these, pictures of the insides of the buildings. It's like, it wasn't just some random guy walking up, but, the feeling I got was the words he used.
Right.
And so things like that are like more common nowadays. And like, I just keep those stories to myself.
Yeah. So,
because most people don't want to hear it.
So when you guys think about, maybe we'll kind of go in this direction. When you guys think about church and just your walks with Jesus, and let's kind of focus on your kids for a minute, right? So they're growing up, obviously from with the skin color that they have. I know I've talked with you and Kirsten and I have about some of the things you guys are already obviously thinking through that are already realistic, because as your kids go out into the world, you're just thinking about what their experience is going to be like. So when you think about church and the kingdom community, what would you guys long for when you think about the kingdom breaking in and God's heart for reaching the nations, right? And the beautiful diversity that is the unique design of God, right? On purpose. When you think about your kids growing up in church life, what do you want them to experience within the kingdom community? Like, what would be some of the things you would hope for them that maybe you have both walked through that you're like, that was great, we want that for them? And then maybe some of the things that you would say, we haven't experienced this, but this is what we would hope for our kids. What would be some of the things that you would long for when it comes to what church is going to be like for kids growing up like yours?
For me, huge is representation. Like, if you don't have someone who is not just someone, like if you don't have someone who's singing, or if you don't have someone on your elders council of more than one color, there should be multiple colors. If you have a multiple race community, I mean, because how will you know what that community, which I hate, but that community needs,
right?
Or what is true to them, or a space for them? How would you know? Rather than, and there's not for lack of love, there's not for lack of care.
Right.
I think, but
it's comfort.
It's more, it's comfort. Well, I think, but it's for leadership. He's asking a kingdom question. We're talking kingdom stuff, not just like hanging out on a Sunday morning, loving each other.
No, I'm saying the leadership that aren't diverse, it's not diverse because they're seeking comfort rather than.
Maybe I don't want to put that into that either, but maybe yes, maybe no, but I'm saying, like, what I would like to see is that representation and that good solid go of like really getting to know people, or people's calling out the giftings in those people and letting them lead, letting them have a space and letting them keep that space, and not just like circle over them over and over, or push and go, move and go. Because I think for people of color, all people of color, especially staying at churches for long periods of time, I've noticed that some of the friends that we've had, they bounce because for them there wasn't enough representation, even though there's a lot more diversity than there was. And they bounce because they didn't have something for them. But yet everything that there is, there's still groups, there's still worship nights, there's still this, but they didn't feel there was something for them and their family. And I don't even know how to get that started or how to make that happen.
Right.
But it needs to happen. Like, for real, like a point of leadership that is actually tangible and solid and works well with others, like to bring that community. That's for me, for kingdom. That's what I want. Because my son, the Lord just told me when he was little and I forgot it, but he is a John the Baptist, and he's going to be out there calling people to the kingdom of God. I know it. But where is he going to take them?
Yeah.
So where, like, is he going to have to divide to a white church, to a black church, to an Asian church? Like, that's not how the kingdom should work. in my opinion. Like, I know it does. I know it's comfort levels, but I shouldn't. Like, I don't know.
Me as a black man with,
You're black?
yeah, black.
Wait, are you sure? I didn't see that. I couldn't tell.
Like I tell you an experience I had at a friend church. We went to go see them sing, and so I walked into the lobby, and then I got a lot of people looking at me, a lot of people smiling at me, but not one person came to say hi. Yeah. I was like, okay. I was like, made me like my church a lot more because people would say hi to you. And then I'm sitting watching her sing, and then I would just look down the pew, and then you'd see like just some random older white person just staring at me.
Just staring.
Just like
they've never seen a black person.
And I'd have to wave to kind of break the little, like, it's just awkward. And then there's experiences where it's like, oh, you're a cool black guy.
Oh, all the time you get that.
And people want to get to know me because I'm a cool black guy, and they need to get to know about black people, and I'm a safe person and get to know about black people through. So it always makes me feel uncomfortable because, like I said, I represent me and my family, and hopefully God. But for me, I would want my kids to walk into a church that, it sounds naive to say, but like their skin color is almost like their eye color. It's like, oh, that's a good looking black man, or that's just a physical characteristic, but that has nothing to do with who he is. And that, not to be dismissive of his heritage in that sense, but as for him, but let's get to know Isaiah. I'm really curious to know Isaiah. I'm really curious to know Cameron, Kingston, Mia Rose.
Yeah.
And then like their black story will just be part of their story once you get to know them.
Right.
It's not like that's the jumping point. Like that's the part that really starts off when it's like race.
Right.
Like, tell me about the black community. I was like, where's the zip code? What zip code is it? Like, I don't know. Half my life was in Compton, and most of it was in Cerritos, which is like the craziest diverse city in the world. So it's like, I want people to get to know me.
Right.
Want to get to know me. And then I'll share you all the black stories in the world, if that's what you want. But get to know me.
Right.
And recommend me to lead a class because I'm worthy of leading a class because you took the time to get to know me.
Right.
Not like, oh, that's a good black person that we can prop up so we can speak to the people sitting in the pews.
Take pictures of, or,
it's like, and me, I can feel the difference.
For sure.
Yeah. I can feel the difference when somebody's walking to me, hey, buddy, and like, I feel weird. It's like I want to back up, like, oh, this is creeping me out.
Right.
And then it's like, it's like I know my family members have felt that at churches I've brought them to.
Yeah.
And then, but my family members have also felt love from the same churches.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just
it's hard to navigate.
It's not easy, but for me, I would want, and I don't know if you get around. I don't know if it's even possible. I'm asking
this
for.
Side of glory, I don't know.
If you could just like kind of dismiss what that person looks like, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not guilty of what I am guilty of doing the same thing to people. So.
Right.
Well, and it's funny too because like we have 4 children, but some of them look a little more Puerto Rican than others. They're not Puerto Rican, but they look more Puerto Rican. And then like my son Cameron, he looks more like me, and he's the one who says he's black the most. So it's like it's relative because to him, his daddy's black, so he's black too. Right. And I know that at some point someone's gonna be like, "You're not black." Or not black enough.
Right.
So I know that's going to happen at some point. And I know that there's some boy who might not date Mia because she is black. And she kind of looks black. I know those things.
Right.
And those things are hard, but that's just life.
Right.
And I don't know how in the kingdom of God, how to navigate that. Because like I said, I have posted a lot of like racial things that I want to stir your heart and want you to think about.
Right.
But the things that I get is like, whoa, man, you're a Christian. Like, you love Jesus. Like, how are you saying what you're saying right now? Like, how are you asking me why it's not okay that somebody goes and just touches my daughter's hair because they wanted to touch black hair? I would never let a stranger touch your kid's hair. Like, why would it, like,
Right.
little things like that, which is very frustrating to me. You know, and I've had people say to, like, my niece, like, oh, you're pretty for a black girl. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean?
Right.
So, I mean, those are the kind of things, and those are just people. It's not, I mean, and I don't separate church and kingdom. I mean, I do separate kingdom, but church people, because they're just people. They're just doing,
Right.
they're just talking. They're just, you know, saying what they say normally. And so that little person who said that to my niece would probably say the same thing if they were in church. It'd be no different, you know?
Right.
So I don't know how to navigate that other than trying to educate, because I still make mistakes all the time.
Right.
You know, there's things I don't know. But what's so hard with, oh yeah, man, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. What's so hard about that?
Right.
What's so hard about, why aren't we doing the things that Jesus tells us to do as far as race goes? I've noticed that is one of the hardest things that I've come to realize, is that we are okay with preaching what to do, how to follow Jesus, but yet when it comes down to implementing them to race, it is so hard.
Right.
And like, I mean, Earl called me a little white girl because I grew up in La Mirada, so all the time, and I am like white too, but it's funny, like, I'm not mad at him for that, that's funny, but like, I can see this, like, what is so hard of just walking it out like Jesus says to? Why in race is it so hard?
Yeah.
Like, why is it so hard to look down at people and say, oh, yeah, you're a little different than me, so that makes me feel uncomfortable to the point where I can't even, you know, I can only love you superficially like Jesus does.
Right. Like, it's funny because I'm pretty honest about situations. I try to be, at least I think I am.
You're right.
There's been times where I'm pretty sure there's been days where I've been called a sellout.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I think all white people are racist in the same day.
Yeah,
like, that's happened. That's happened to me. I'm like, I think I'm in the right lane, then. I think I'm doing pretty good, because both of those can't be true.
Yeah.
So I really just, like, I think if you have a white person walking into a black church, a black person walking into a white church, and all the different possibilities.
Yeah.
If the person who's greeting them is greeting them with truly trying to, you know, make them feel comfortable because they should feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Rather than, like, this is a person who's different than us. Let's make sure he's really comfortable.
Right. Right.
And let's change the way we talk and, like, over smile and make our eyes really big and like, you're not acting normal right now. It's freaking me out.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna leave, right?
Yeah. And so just be normal. I mean, treat them like you treat everyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that would have a big impact. And if we can, you know, let that slide into, like, oh, we need somebody to lead. Well, then now you have friendships and bonds, and that person can fit that need because you know that person will be good there.
Yeah.
And you're not putting it there to fill a demographic.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this one final question. So, and you each might have obviously different answers. So, knowing, again, kind of thinking about your kids, they're going to grow up with things said about them, right? They're going to, some of the comments you've already described have already been said. You know that this is going to be part of what they're going to walk through based on the color of their skin, right? If you were to each say one thing to all your kids, if you could just narrow it down to one thing and say something like, okay, when you go through life looking the way you do, people are going to say things. You're going to get hated on. Racist things are going to be said. Even if people aren't trying to, they're going to come off dismissive. That's what you're going to feel. But here's the one thing you need to know about Jesus is you walk out life with your skin color looking the way you do. What would you narrow that down to? If you were going to say, this is the road you're going to walk based on your physical features, but here's the one thing you need to know about Jesus as you navigate all of it. What would you each say if you had to say one thing to him?
Oh, geez, that's difficult.
I mean, what comes to mind immediately is that Jesus Jesus sees you as the most beautiful thing ever, and that's all that matters. You You know, because you know, people are broken and people are ignorant and people are going to say things to try to hurt you. But know that you're beautiful, no matter what they say.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's words. And those words are a reflection of where they're at, not about where you're at.
Yeah. That's good.
It is that to me, it makes me sad to hear that stuff. Like when her cousin said those things about us. Oh, I'm not supposed to say cousin. Sorry. When the family member said that, you know, they didn't want me to know. What I still don't know exactly what he said, or he should. He could clean us up with the editing.
It's fine.
But I wasn't mad. I was sad for that guy.
Yeah.
I was sad for that person because it's like, where did he have to be to say those things about us? Because we've shown nothing but love and respect for him.
Yeah.
And so, like, hopefully my kids can be at a place when people say those things, it makes them sad for them.
Mm.
Not insecure, like,
not break them down.
And break them down and make them feel all place are unworthy. You know, I mean, I'm sure sometimes it will.
Yeah.
Right.
I would think more of my daughter than my boys, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it's just like, it's not true.
Right.
It's like
it's
Jesus loves you. It sounds simple, but it is.
Right.
I think the truth is simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dana, what about for you?
A little. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. Go ahead. What your one thing?
Well, I mean, my one thing would be really similar to Earl, but it would be like just probably feistier. But like, you need to remember who your identity is in. Like, you know, like your identity is in Christ. Who you are is a reflection of what you know about walking with Jesus.
Right.
You know, and like just like Earl said, I probably add in a couple other things like how Earl did, but basically, like the Holy Spirit lives inside of you. You know, and so like you are powerful and you're strong. And you have this power within you that he gave to you because you walk with Jesus. Like, so something amongst those lines of like what they are, I would just remind them of what they have been given.
Right.
And then I would also remind them of the grace that they've been given as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would want to upfill them with whatever words that would be said as far as who they are in Christ, that the gifts that they have been given, the strength they've been given, power that they have been given, but also the grace and mercy that they've been given.
Yeah.
So they can hopefully be able to navigate that easier with that power and confidence and strength, and then also be able to give that mercy. So I think that's kind of the same thing, you know, the grace of like, where was that guy, you know?
Right.
But still like, okay, I brush off your shoulder, but man, that's sad for you. I'm gonna pray for you.
Right.
You know, like for real, and really, and hopefully they really pray, not just say it, you know, like not just I'm gonna pray for you, but like, Lord, heal that guy's heart.
Right. Man.
That's all you can do.
That's all you can do. Yeah. Well, I'm just so thankful for both of you. I think I really appreciate you sharing your story. Obviously, my wife you got such a dear friendship with you guys, and we've learned so much just getting to hear your story, and you've been gracious with us as we're kind of learning to hear different perspectives. And so thanks you guys for doing this. This has really been powerful. Thank you.
No, thank you for doing it, man. I appreciate it.
You're okay? We're okay?
Yeah, no, this is awesome. So, yeah, everybody, until the next conversation, grace and peace.